Welcome back to video number 9. All right, today we are going to be solving systems of inequalities. Our goal for today, given a system of inequalities, you will be able to graph and answer questions that analyze the solution. All right, so in order to do that today, you are going to be needing a ruler, and I would recommend if you've got 2 different colored highlighters, today it might be handy to have some color to help us in our analysis of the solution. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. So we are going to be solving inequalities on a coordinate system. So our directions, we're going to graph the system of inequalities. We're going to label the solution set with an S, and we're going to state a point that ... and that's going to be the analysis that we're going to be doing. Okay, so when we are graphing an inequality on a coordinate system, there's a couple of rules that we're going to have to follow. All right, so when we have a less than or a greater than, all right, what we have to do then, so this means we are not included in the answer because there's no equals underneath. So that means we're going to graph with a dotted line. Okay, if we have a greater than or equal to or a less than or equal to, that means we're now allowed to include it in our solution. So we're going to use a solid line to draw the line. But remember, since this is an inequality, it's not a single solution. It's going to be a whole shaded region. It's a whole area that is our solution. So if you are greater than, and I'm going to put my x in here. So if, I'm sorry, my y in here. If my y is greater than, or my y is greater than or equal to, then we're going to shade up. If my y is less than, or my y is less than or equal to, that means we're going to shade down. Okay, so it's all about the symbol of the inequality with the y value. All right, so let's go ahead, let's jump in and let's learn as we go. So here we take a look. Solve the system of inequalities graphically. So the first thing we have to do is make sure our equations are in y-intercept format. So I'm going to take my first equation and I'm going to divide everything by 2. Now I'm dividing by a positive, so my inequality sign stays the same. Y is greater than x minus 3. Okay, now I'm going to go take a look at my second one. So here I'm going to keep the y where it is. I'm going to add the 5 to the other side. And I'm going to subtract the x to the other side. So I'm going to do both. And then I'm going to get those cancel. So y is less than or equal to negative x plus 5. Okay, let's go back and we're going to graph our first equation. So if I take a look here, I have y is greater than x minus 3. So we're going to graph this just like a normal line. I'm going to start at my y-intercept, which is 3. So on my y-axis, I go down to negative 3. 1, 2, 3, and there's my first dot. There's my first point. Now my slope, there's no number in front of the x, so that means my slope is a 1 over 1. So I'm going to go up 1 to the right 1. 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 And all the way across our graph. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to connect my points, but be very careful. We have to decide, am I going to use a dotted line or a solid line? So let's take a look at that inequality symbol. So y is greater than, it doesn't have an equal sign, so it's not equal to, so that means we're going to use a dotted line. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to set up my ruler, and I'm going to make a dotted or a dashed line all the way across. Okay, we're going to put arrows and then we're going to write our equation. Okay, so now we have to shade. Okay, so for this inequality, when we shade, I have to decide if I'm going to shade above the line or shade below the line. So here, if we take a look, y is greater than. The inequality sign is opening towards the y. So y is greater than, so it matches this first one, so that means we're going to shade up. So what I'm going to have you do is take your first color, place your highlighter or your pen on the line, and then go upwards. Place it on the line and go up. Place it on the line and go up. And we're just going to do this, and it will be shading up. Okay, so now I have my first equation graphed. So now I'm going to take a look at my second inequality. So here we're going to start at positive 5. So on my y-axis, I go to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here my slope, now there's no number there, so that's really a 1 over 1, but there's a negative. So it's negative 1 over 1. So I'm going to go down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1. Okay, now I'm going to use my ruler. Now this time I have to decide, am I going to use another dotted line or a solid line? So if I look at my inequality symbol, there's an equal sign underneath. So this is less than or equal to. If it's equal to, then it is a solid line because we're including the points on the line in our solution. So now this is y is less than negative x plus 5. So now I'm going to take my second color and we're going to shade. So this time I see y is less than or equal to, and then the equation. So if y is less than, okay, that matches the second one, so we're going to shade down. So we're going to take our highlighter, we're going to place it on the line, and we're going to go down. Place it on the line and go down. On the line and go down. Okay, which means it would also be here. Okay, so now that we have graphed, we still have to answer the final question. So this question told us to solve. Now, so your solution with an inequality is not a single point. It's an entire region. What is greater than this and less than that? Well, that would be this area here where we have both of our colors. So this would be our solution. So we're going to put a big S there for our solution. Okay, so now let's answer the follow-up question we have at the bottom. State a point that is within the solution set. So we want to pick a point in the solution set. I always recommend make sure you pick one that's right in the middle of the big S there. So if I take a look here, I could use points, let's see, -2, +3. That would be a point in my solution. So -2, +3. So let me ask you a question here. Is the point, so here's another follow-up question, I'm going to put a star here. Is the point, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 in the solution? I'm going to go ahead and ask you to pause the video, and I'm going to ask you to input this into the computer. Okay, so what did you say? All right, well, I said no because the dotted line is not part of the solution. So since this line here is dashed, it's not included. It's like having an open dot on a number line. It's not part of the answer. It's just the barrier. All right, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and flip it over and let's try another. Okay, so number 2, solve the system of inequalities graphically. Okay, so the first one we're going to take a look at, we first need to put it in y-intercept form. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. -2y is greater than or equal to -x minus 2. And then I'm going to divide by -2. But wait a second, error, error, error. We've divided by a negative. When you divide by a negative, you have to flip the inequality. So instead of being greater than or equal to, now it's less than or equal to. So now we have y is less than or equal to a negative over a negative is a positive. Now the number in front of the x is a 1, so it's a positive 1/2 x. And then -2 divided by -2 is a positive 1. And now if I take a look over here, x is greater than or equal to -4. I can't simplify that any further. So let's go ahead and take a look. So first we're going to graph our first inequality. So here we're going to start at +1. So on my y-axis, I go to +1. And my slope is +1/2. So I'm going to go up 1 to the right 2. Up 1 to the right 2. Up 1 to the right 2. Okay, now, before I draw my line, I have to make the decision. Is this going to be a dotted line or a solid line? Well, let's take a look. There is an equal sign under the inequality. So that means if there's an equal sign, it's a solid line. So y is less than or equal to 1/2 x plus 1. Okay, so now we have to do our shading. So I'm going to pick up my first colored highlighter, and let's take a look. Y is less than or equal to, because we're pointing away, or we're going away from the y, so less than. So I'm going to take my highlighter, put it on the line, and shade down. Put it on the line and shade down. Okay, now we have to graph our second line, and that is x is greater than or equal to -4. Now, let's say you forgot how to graph this. Okay, well, if we forget how to graph it, that's okay. We're going to go to our graphing calculators. Now, we don't have an x equals, but we do have a y equals, and we know that x equals is just going to be the opposite. So I'm going to clear this out, and I'm going to type in x equals -4 and hit graph. Or y equals -4. So if y equals -4 is horizontal, that means x is greater than or equal to -4 is going to go, that's going to be a vertical line. So let's take a look there. So -4 on the x-axis. So on my x-axis, I'm going to go to -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to put a point there. And then I'm going to draw my vertical line. Now this is greater than or equal to, since it has that line underneath, this is going to be a solid line. Okay, so x is greater than or equal to 4. So now we have to make the decision. Now we can't shade up or down here. So instead we're going to have to shade either right or left. So if x is greater than or equal to -4, is greater than going to be towards the positives or towards the negatives? That's right, towards the positives. So we're going to shade towards the right. Okay. And then now we have to answer our final question, because make sure we answer the question, which said solve. So my solution is where we see both of the colors. All right, our follow-up question here for this one. State a point that is not true for either inequality. So it is not true for either inequality. So if I pick a point in my S, that's true for both. If I pick a point here, that means it's true for only the pink. If I pick a point here, it's true for only the green. Now this one has no shading, so that means it's not true for either one. So let's go ahead and pick a point there. I'm going to go ahead and pick -2, +1. Okay, I'm going to have you flip over now, and let's take a look at number 3. So solve the system of inequalities graphically. So I'm going to help you out with the beginning, and then I'm going to have you finish this one on your own. So the first thing we have to do is get this into y-intercept format. So we're going to divide by -3. And then who sees it? We've got an error. So error, error, error alert. We've got to divide, or we're dividing by a negative, so we have to flip that inequality. Instead of greater than or equal to, now it's less than or equal to. So y is less than or equal to -2x, and then +6. Our second line is y equals 2. Remember, you can always check that out right in the calculator, plug it in. Okay, so I'm going to have you go ahead and finish this one up on your own, and then answer the follow-up question in the computer. All right, let's take a look and see how we did. So your graph should end up something like this. Let's just remind ourselves we should have a dotted line going across, a solid line going here with your S, and then the final question, which is true for y is greater than true, but not for the second equation? Well, that would be, on my graph, that would be the pink area, so that's true, but not true for my diagonal line. All right, have a great night, everyone.